Our Man in Panama. In one of those interesting little moments of serendipity, an article claiming 2001's The Tailor of Panama, the story of an MI6 troublemaker trowing gleefully through the corruption of the titular country, as Pierce Brosnan's best Bond film, appeared mere days before the revelations of the Panama Papers. Accompanying those revelations came innumerable reminders of MI6's destruction of Snowden files. Thank goodness then, MI6 had their democratic tenets in order by the time that dastardly sea was waving 9 eyes in their faces in late 2015. Or was that Spectre film just a fiction? Author Frank Anderson's assertion of The Tailor of Panama as Brosnan's best Bond film, when Taylor is conclusively not a Bond film, is linked to a very interesting thesis on Brosnan's 4-film tenure as James Bond. Anderson states that Brosnan is so fundamentally Bond-like he could only bring a limited amount of idiosyncrasy to his portrayal. While Lazenby, Moore and Dalton all had detractors stating their unsuitability for the role, Craig and Connery initially weathered such critiques as well, the qualities their detractors honed in on, Lazenby too ill at ease, Moore too tongue-in-cheek, Dalton too funereal, etc., etc., were often the very qualities that gave their characterizations and films a personality and appeal distinct from one another. Anderson's contention continues, though, that as Brosnan is so essentially Bond-like, what with his dark chiselled features, smooth voice and steady poise, he is often made a stronger and more distinguished evocation of the James Bond character and mythos in a non-Bond film such as The Tailor of Panama. And while some of the author's broader contentions, that Brosnan was never a great Bond and never made a great Bond film, certainly risk alienating readers, the other contentions, I think, are insightful in unpacking Brosnan's impact as Bond. In terms of a lack of defining qualities, it should be pointed out that Brosnan was the 5th actor to play James Bond. At this point in time, delivering a unique dimensional to was an increasingly tough ask. Also, Brosnan took on the role at a point where Bond had been off-screen for more than half a decade, Bond's relevance was at the peak of negative appraisals, and the 3 previous films, Moore's dark-rich finale, A View to a Kill, and Dalton's more sombre-tinged twosome, The Living Daylights and License to Kill, had, comparatively speaking, failed to set the American box office alight. Commercially speaking, establishing a unique Bond persona was less important than establishing a steady-as-she-goes persona. So even if Brosnan was keen to go in a particular direction, and Brosnan stated he was keen to peel back the layers of the character, there was also the health of the franchise to attend to. And so Brosnan was a return to the cooler-than-cool early Connery template, with some 80s humanism and 70s punning thrown in for good measure. If you're judging a Bond in terms of being an all-rounder, Brosnan, I think it can be fairly said, is the one to beat. However, if we consider Brosnan's association with James Bond in terms of his ambition with the character, the aforementioned peeling back the layers, it would seem incomplete to overlook his satirical takes on Bond-like characters. We especially need to consider Tailor of Panama and 2005's The Matador, what with their tales of debauched and deflated agents and assassins, as opportunities for Brosnan to peel back some layers that Bond could only partly accommodate. Even Brosnan might classify Taylor as his best Bond film. What Taylor reveals, though, is an emotional void and sly opportunism in the iconically stylish, freewheeling MI6 figure, and all the harmless seduction of a GoldenEye love scene is now imbued with something palpably harmful. A typical Bond pun, such as, "When I see something worth having, I go after it," no longer possesses that amusing mock entitlement. It is instead entitlement and objectification through and through. The tailor of the piece, an ex-con with a past that Brosnan's agent has the measure of, in turn has a down-on-his-luck friend who has the measure of Brosnan's amorality. Yes, the tailor may concoct elaborate facades and stories to disguise his past, but, as the friend notes, he has heart, Mr. Cool. There's clearly no hope of finding a heart in the MI6 agent, a possibility the Bond series continually flirts with, if but in moments. The Bondian cool on show in Taylor is stripped back to reveal a bleak, banal coldness. No warmth to be found here, dear audience. The Matador is a little brighter. It's still utterly satirical. It's over the Hillary's Bond, scoffs at government work, and instead finds employment within the corporate sector as a facilitator of fatalities, i.e. hitman. And in rather familiar style, the women he hooks up with remain the same age while he steadily advances in years. But this guy, unlike the MI6 monster of the previous film, is intrigued with and even experiences pangs of desire for meaningful relationships. He's so used to the performative dimensions of socializing, though, that he struggles with the emotional risks and respectful communication inherent in genuine, empathetic interactions. He's also a tad anxious he might give his game away, but desirous he is, and his encounters and budding friendship with an opposite type of male, gentle in nature and belonging within a committed relationship to a woman of a similar age, for goodness sake, duly sabotage his inflated confidence in all things murderous and sexual. He burns out. His eyes can no longer focus on his targets, or he sees in his targets a juvenile version of himself. Look at me, I'm a wreck, a parody. Oh, James. But he's freer than he's ever been, and Brosnan is sensational and sensationally funny in this comic role. Unshackled of Bondian responsibilities, he is more Bondian than ever. Both the Tailor of Panama and the Matador present a satirical Bond figure operating in a less fantastical context. It's Bond in the real world, and boy oh boy, Bond doesn't translate appealingly to this context. I hope I never meet him. I think that Brosnan has deepened our appreciation of Bond. He's dimensionalised and explored the character from the point where the other actors left off. The thing is, as Anderson's article suggests, you need to venture outside of his Bondian filmography to gain the greatest appreciation of this. How sly, 007, how sly.